सहनाववतु सहनो भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्। So welcome to today's talk on Bhaja Govindam. So let's chant the verses that we have seen so far. So we've seen the first 3 verses. So join me if you know the words. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi nahi rakshati tu karane, Nahi nahi rakshati tu karane, Mudha jahi dhanagama trishnam, Kuru sadbudhi manasi vritrishnam, Yallabhase nijakaramupatam, Vitam dena vinodaya Chitam. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Nari Stanabharanabhidesham, Deshvamagamohavesham, Etanmam Savasadi Vikaram, Manasi Vichintayava Varam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. Okay, so so far we have seen in detail verses 1 and 2, and so what Shankaracharya ji wrote this text, Bhaja Govindam, and to help us to know the facts of life and to help us to look at the reality and what really matters and what will help us beyond, well, in this life and also beyond this life. And so it is a text with instructions for us. And then it points out the facts of life as it really is. So it uses some really nice sort of poetry and also some fairly strong language, in some ways forceful, and also telling the truth as it is. So, well, in verses 1 and 2, what we've seen so far, and even 3, is that on the one hand, Shankaracharya ji gives some facts of life. And then he sort of also points out our foolishness, and but then he just doesn't do that. He also gives us valuable instructions what we have to do. So he exposes what we're doing wrong, if you like, or our misconceptions, and then he goes on to say, well, actually, what do we do about this? So this beautiful text, it exposes us to the knowledge of the self. And this is about who am I really, and what is my purpose here in life. So this is what we mean by self-knowledge. And again, the reason we have to come to this philosophy for this knowledge is because it's given in nowhere else in this level of detail. I mean, science talks about a lot of things that we observe, about matter in this world, but then it doesn't talk about who are we, who is observing this matter. And so therefore, we have to come to Vedanta to understand this idea of who am I really? And in nowhere else is it given in this kind of detail, though there is some bits of it here and there that might, be similar. So the first verse, as you found, we kind of repeat it after each one. And okay, so in the first verse, sorry, we received the instruction that knowledge of the world is useful to help us to get by in the world, but beyond that, it's not very helpful. And here it talks about when the appointed time, when death comes, grammar rules will not save us. And by grammar rules here, it just doesn't mean only grammar rule, but it just means knowledge of the world, all the things that we learn at school, college, etc., all the things that science teaches us, really, and things around us is what this refers to here. So then what does he say? He says, the only thing that will help us beyond is to develop a rapport with Govinda. So how is that? So Govinda here refers to the Lord, to the divine, and it could be your interpretation of the divine. So if you are working in the context of another religion, you can use that version as well, and that's absolutely fine. So it is your rapport with the divine. So how do we do that? Is by serving Govinda, or by loving Govinda, by chanting the Lord's name, by repeating the Lord's name, and realize Govinda. By realize means we become one with Govinda. We come to feel the presence of the divine, and there is no distinction between the divine and ourselves, and we come to know that it is one and the same. And it is not an intellectual knowledge here, it is a knowledge that it is something that we feel, that we know. So in the second verse, what we looked at is the instruction was to move our attention away from accumulating wealth and external objects, and instead to focus our attention on reality. So the reality here means things that are here to stay, that is permanent, and not things that change. So everything that is manifest that we see around us changes. So in its world, in its manifestation, the world, I mean, we know we go through seasons. One moment the cloud is here, and then the next moment it isn't. Everything changes. Our appearance changes. Everything really completely changes, and nature keeps changing. So that is what we found in the second verse, and we've been looking at the third verse where we were told about to see the body for what it is. Okay, so here I also explained last time. So here it is referring to a female body, and this doesn't just mean female body. It's any sort of attraction and lust that we think about. So it's it's not inclusive here. It's not explicitly saying, but that's what it means. And it just means do not fall prey to delusion, and to really be able to see the modifications of fat and flesh, and the various physical phenomenon as we see them. Okay, so how here the last line was what I wanted to talk a little bit about a bit more today. It says manasi vichintaya varam varam, and then that means think well in your mind again and again. So So here, what we need to do is we need to train the mind, and that is a very important instruction. So train the mind means to work with the mind in a nice and compassionate way. So first, to be able to train the mind, we need to understand how the mind works, and also we need to do that just very gently. So well, the nature of the mind is that it is always very active. It gets images from whatever is stored in our mind. So you can think about of our mind just like a computer in some ways. It's got a hard drive, things that are saved there for long term. And then it's got your, short-term memory, whatever you're processing that's happening as we speak and as you are getting new information in. And so that's what the mind does. I mean, it keeps it retrieves this information that's stored somewhere in various places inside of us. So the imprints that we have collected, not just in this life, but also in past lives. And so past lives, we don't know about them. And sometimes you kind of think, we sometimes feel something or see something and we feel, oh, but how does this come about? And we don't really know. And a lot of time, these are things that are from past lives and we just don't know it. And there are things, and they can be not just things, but they can be emotions as well. And sometimes we react to certain things and we don't know why. And there's potentially nothing in this life that could explain why we react in such a way with certain things. But and very often there is an explanation, but we're just not aware of it. And very often it comes from past lives, and that's what a lot of people reject. But there is no other explanation for it. It's got to come from somewhere. And so, well, what we are collecting in our mind in this life is something we can control. Okay, so we always have a choice. We kind of say, oh, actually, I don't have a choice. And that's really not correct. That's really not true. Sometimes we say that's the case, but we always have a choice. So what are our choices in life? So our choices is to do something, is to go along with something, or not to do something, or not to go along with something, or to do things differently. So we've always got these three options. I mean, they are options, whatever we choose to do. So the way we experience the world, or what's going on around us, is through our senses. So we experience things through our eyes, what we see, what we look at. And then we also hear things. So these are things that are going into our memory that and also that we store. And then we also experience things from the world with our tongue, so through taste. And then through touch, we also experience things. So and there's one missing, and that's smell. Yeah, so these are things that we kind of, this is how we experience the world around us. And so we can filter these things. What we listen to is something that we have control on. And if there's something going on and we don't want to listen to it, we can either just leave, or we can turn it off if it's something that if we've got the remote control in our hand. So very often we've got these choices, and also about what we want to see as well. We have got quite a bit of control. We can just close our eyes if we don't want to see what's around us. Well, of course, don't do that when you're driving or when you're in traffic, but generally, some things we can just not, or choose to not see. Okay. And so a lot of, sometimes people say, oh, but this is really difficult these days because there's just so much going on. There's just so much social media and all that. But then we need to realize that we can actually not subscribe to these things. We can actually ration our use of it. We can choose not to go on it, or we can choose to just visit certain things that we really need to. So, you know, and so sometimes we say, oh, we haven't got a choice, and that's very often that's not really true. I mean, it might be true for some people who need these for their job or whatever, but for the majority of us, we can actually control these things. So we can filter things out and stick with what is helpful to us and drop those that are not helpful to us. So now is the question is, what is helpful to us? How do we know what is helpful to us? So to know what is helpful to us, we need to have a goal, and then whatever helps us along this, you know, on the path of this goal is going to be helpful to us, and anything that doesn't help us is just not helpful for this goal. So we have to work out what our goal is, and obviously, when we're studying Bhaja Govindam here, the goal is spiritual pursuit, is a spiritual life. So that is the goal that we're talking about here. So, you know, when we want to, if we accept this as our goal, then we need to think what helps us and what doesn't help us in our goal. So does it help us to watch news all the time to see what's going on in the world and get our mind really busy with that sort of thing? So the more our mind is busy with that sort of thing, then there will be less and less time for our mind to think about the divine, to help, you know, to develop that rapport with Govinda, as I've explained. So really it is, you know, and if we want to sort of live a spiritual life, we must devote quite a bit of time to spirituality. We need to find the time. We need to sort of see what it is that we're doing that's helping and what it is that we're doing that's not helping. So, and it would be different for all of us, and depending on you know what else we have to do in life. So so to talk a little bit more about the nature of the mind. So the nature of the mind is to recall things. You know, it needs to be like that. So otherwise we won't be able to function, you know, in the world. So when you think about something, even, you know, when I'm speaking, your mind needs to be there. You need to have an understanding of the word that I'm talking about. You need to know what that means, and then you need to recall it at the right time. So if, let's say now I want to give an example about a red apple. So you can only relate to that experience if you know what an apple is, and then you've stored it in your mind somewhere, and then you can recall it. Okay, so the mind really needs to work quite fast for us to be able to understand a conversation. So really, you know, if we're trying to be quiet, if we're trying to sort of concentrate, and you know, we kind of think, oh well, actually the mind is jumping everywhere, but that's the nature of the mind. The mind does that. So when we need to work with the mind, we need to be aware of this fact. So we don't need to get annoyed with the mind. We don't need to get frustrated with the mind, but we need to work with it slowly and slowly. And in the Yoga Sutras, there is this thing that we've taught, that I might have mentioned before, which is called Pratipaksha Bhavna. So what it means is, oops, I can just possibly, oh, no, sorry, no, I can't write it here. Okay, never mind. So, okay, so Pratipaksha Bhavna means when an unhelpful thought comes, we need to acknowledge it first of all, and then we replace it with a helpful thought. So that's what it says. So when a thought comes, and we acknowledge it, and then if it's something that's unhelpful to us, then we replace it with a helpful thought. So similarly, what we've seen so far is that this text, Bhaja Govindam, really quite nicely guides us to develop this. So for instance, if we go back through to verse number 2, which says, give up your thirst to possess wealth, and create in your mind devoid of passions, with whatever you get, entertain your mind. So so whenever these thoughts of passions come, whenever we feel that we want to do this and achieve this and get more of this, and our desire to achieve, our desire to do a lot and accumulate a lot, then what we need to do is we need to kind of change. We need to replace that thought and saying, well, actually, the things that we want to accumulate are not the things that are going to give us happiness. So the happiness is not in the object that's out there. So the happiness is within us, and whatever temporary happiness, whatever, if we think that we are happy when we get something, then that is a temporary happiness. That is not the lasting happiness. And so again, it is trying to help us to change these thoughts. So when these thoughts to possess wealth, to accumulate things, to do a lot of things, to take up a lot of challenges endlessly, then what it's saying here is create in your mind thoughts of the reality. So this is how we do this. So we replace that thought with what is the thought of the reality. We give ourselves the right knowledge that actually the happiness doesn't come from this, so therefore this is what we need to do. And then we also kind of say to ourselves, well, we need to be happy with what we get as a result of our past and a result of what we have done. And also we need to be happy with that. So this is, so it is kind of saying don't do something, but then it is also telling us how to help us to not do that. Okay, so this idea of rethinking and when something comes up in our mind, how to rethink it is something very important that these verses are giving us. And this one gives us the same. So verse 3, it is saying, well, actually, when we are faced with lust or anything like that, think well in our mind again and again that, again, this is not the reality. This is just a modification of things. This is not what will give us happiness. This is just a modification. And again, this is not the reality. So therefore, we need to sort of replace those thoughts of lust with the correct understanding that actually this is only lust. This is not actual happiness. This is not the thought of reality. And so therefore, okay, so I'll just repeat myself a little bit here, but to know what helpful thoughts are, we need to be very clear of our goals in life. So we need to understand the reality, and we need to and how we get to know this and is by listening to discourses, spiritual discourses by the right people that encourage us to think. So we need to listen to things that are free from contradiction. And if we perceive any contradiction, then we need to ask questions from people who know. And so the reason that this is very important for us to think is because by nature, our intellect rejects things that it's not ready to accept. So if I say something completely absurd to you now, you will just reject it because you'll not be prepared to accept that. Okay, so if I say butter is always black, so you will not accept that because that's not, so the intellect just rejects something that is not correct. And also there are loads of things that we know intuitively. So therefore we need to be sure about some of the things that we listen to. They need to make sense to us. And a lot of, well, as we can see, religion, people, especially in the West, so religion, a lot of people have moved away from religion, and and one of the reasons is because people reject a lot of what the religion is saying. When they're starting to question things in religion, then there is no answer to some of these things sometimes. So that is why people kind of reject things. So later on, we will find that what also Adi Shankaracharya ji encourages us to do is to spend time with people who have this self-knowledge, or people who are on this path, people who are like-minded, who think in these ways. And so there is, there are various things that will come. So that's what we know are helpful thoughts to us. So another point that is important, so it's not really mentioned here, but I wanted to talk about this in a bit more detail today, is this idea of how we assimilate this knowledge, this philosophical or this practical philosophy knowledge about us. So to be able to access this knowledge, we have to purify our mind. Okay, so purify our mind, what does that mean? So, well, in the beginning, we need to have enough patience to listen to these things, listen over and over again, and then we begin to think about it. So then so the listening part, I would have mentioned this word before, it's shravana, so where you listen. And then the second bit is where we start to think about these things. So where we start questioning what we've found, or interpreting this knowledge, whether it makes sense, whether we are able to relate to it. So to be able to keep our mind pure, it's just a phrase that I'm using here, but what it means is to help us on this path, we need to have to develop our own spiritual practice of some sort. So we need to, our mind has been programmed for lives and lives to sort of believe that we're this body, we are, we are this mind, and a lot of things that we've been taught, we're all women here. So this is, that's what we've been told to think about, but actually we are a lot more than that. So to understand these things, we need it needs to really sink in for us, and it is things that needs to go into our impressions in our mind. So they need to be engraved somewhere in our mind, that we kind of develop a pattern that becomes it becomes part of us. So so we need to develop a spiritual practice of our own, and that can be that can take different shapes and forms. So what the scriptures say about a spiritual practice is it is something that needs to be done regularly, so without fail, at a set time, and after physically cleaning ourselves. So we need to have, the body needs to be clean before we do that, and that needs to be in a clean place as well. And we keep going, we keep it for a very, very long time. And also it has to be something realistic that fits in with our liking and our lifestyle. Okay, so if for those of us who are still working, so if we say, oh yeah, I'm going to have this spiritual practice every morning that lasts 3 hours, so we know we're doomed to fail, right? So this is not realistic, this is not right. And so we need to choose something that is realistic for us. So whether it's 15 minutes every day, but or whether it is 20 minutes or whatever, or even 10 minutes every day, to do something that we really that we like, and that we do every time. I mean, sometimes it's fine if there's been a day where you can't do it, you really don't feel well, or something has happened and whatnot, and you should, that's fine. Especially at the beginning, this will happen, but then you need to sort of rise from it as well and say, okay, that doesn't mean I'm a failure, that doesn't mean I can't do this, that doesn't mean I shouldn't pursue, but it is just to acknowledge, okay, so today this didn't happen for this reason, so tomorrow I'm going to try harder. And then and be compassionate with yourself, not get into that routine, not get into a sort of a negative mindset. and just to be positive and to enable yourself to be encouraging to yourself, and do whatever fits. And also it is important to do something that you feel happy with. I mean, there's no point trying to do something that your mate is doing that they are raving about just because it works for them, but we have to choose what works for us. And it could be, you know, so some of these can be reading part of the scriptures, reading some mantras, or any scriptures that you've got, or you could or you could sit quietly and repeat a mantra, or you could do japa, which is with a rosary bead, repeating a mantra, or anything like that, that you know that you like to do. And even the mantra that you have, if you haven't got one already, you might pick one that you like, and keep doing it all the time. So by doing this, we then develop this work. What we do is we purify the mind, and that kind of helps us to keep progressing on this path. So if we don't do that, then what happens is, then, you know, in the world, we kind of often talk to people who don't share our views or believe in a certain different ways, and we very, very easily get swayed about other things that are being said to us, and say, oh well, you know, this is all rubbish, and you know, that sort of thing. And if we are not purifying our mind, then our progress on this can be cut short quite quickly, and we get influenced by what other people are saying. So, and also, you know, in this tradition, one of the things that people do is people repeat the glory of the divine, and then try and identify with the divine. And also sometimes we kind of repeat that, you know, various hymns or whatever you call them, that kind of talk about the nature of reality, and you know, things like, we have done a few kirtan type things as well before, where we've chanted things around, you know, I'm not this mind, I'm not this, and you know, and these things to help us. And the more we repeat it to ourselves, the more we kind of start actually believing these things. If we have to question it, of course, but it helps us on our journey to kind of assimilate this knowledge, which is very different to what we've been told. Okay, so therefore, what I'm trying to say is that, just to summarize what I've said so far, is that first we need to have a goal, and to help us with our goal, we need to have a spiritual practice that helps to purify our mind, and we need to, in the beginning, listen and then question, ask questions. You know, when things are not clear totally, so you need to ask what you know, so that you are completely clear about what things mean. And then also we talked about this idea of, when unhelpful thoughts come, how you practice this this thing called pratipaksha bhavna, which is to replace an unhelpful thought with a helpful thought. So we've looked at a few examples of these in the context of Bhaja Govindam. So now, okay, so just to go back to verse 2. So verse 2, it's saying, give us your thirst to possess wealth. So it is not really saying that wealth itself is a problem. And also verse number 3, where we are talking about lust, about physical attraction. And again, we're not saying this is a problem. We're not saying women are a problem, men are a problem, attraction, lust, and all that are problems. This is not really what we're saying. But what these verses are saying is that they are referring to the misplaced value or importance that we attribute to those things. Okay, so in the one about, you know, about wealth, we know that for a lot of people think that wealth is the end of all, you know, so that's all that's important. But that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, yeah, you can have it, that's fine, but it shouldn't be the main purpose of life, and it shouldn't be the most important thing in life. Similarly, when we're talking about women, man, etc., or lust or any relationship, it's not saying that, you know, we don't need a healthy relationship. A lot of us need a healthy relationship, and that's fine, but we don't need to be over reliant. There shouldn't be an obsession with it. So this is what it is kind of saying. So Vedanta doesn't have a problem with wealth. It kind of says, you know, if wealth comes your way and you are accumulating it in a dharmic sort of way, as in a righteous sort of way, with, you know, in a way that's not harmful to others, then that's fine. But then, you know, when you think about it, there is accumulating of wealth is very rarely not harmful to others in some ways. I mean, you know, there's the environment involved and all that. So there's always something in it that we need to think about as well. And so then, yeah, so just to sort of have this understanding that, you know, wealth is not a problem, but we need to know the place of wealth in the world. We need to know that it's not the end itself, it's not what brings us happiness, and we need to use this judiciously. And then we will now move on to the fourth verse. So now the emphasis on the fourth verse is on things being ephemeral or not lasting. And so in life, and I think we can all relate to that. So we will chant it first, and then we will go and look at the meaning. Nalini jala gata jalamati taralam tatpaji vitamati shayatapalam vidi vyadi bimana krastam lokam shokahatam cha samastam. I'll chant it again. Nalini dala gata jalamati taralam tatpaji vitamati shayatapalam vidi vyadi bimana krastam lokam shokahatam cha samastam. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. Okay, so what this verse means, so I'm not going to explain word by word, but so a translation of this verse means that the water drop, so a water droplet on a lotus petal has an extremely uncertain existence. So, you know, if you see a little bit of water on a lotus plant on the tip of it, of a petal, then it's not going to stay there for a long time. Okay, so it's just going to fall off. And if you kind of wanting to show this to someone, by the time you kind of show them, or by the time you get your camera out and you know, you put your password for your phone and then get it in focus and all that, it's probably not going to be there anymore. Okay, so this is a little bit what it is saying. So it has an uncertain existence, so it's not going to be there forever. And also life is ever unstable. So life is unpredictable. And then the second bit of the so this one here, it says, understand that the very world is consumed by disease and conceit and is riddled with pangs. So so this sounds a little bit negative, but it is not very, very far off from the truth, actually, when we think about it. So you know, so I think it's good to understand that you know, well, especially younger people around might say, oh, actually, you know, my life is great, and you know, things are all great and rosy, and this doesn't seem, you know, I've got many years to live now, and you know, everything is perfect, and I'm fit and healthy, and you know, all that sort of thing. And so it's great. I mean, you know, if that's what people are enjoying in their life, then you know, we're happy for them. but we also know that things will change for them too, unfortunately. If so they might not need to know about it, but then things will change, right? So and that's the way it is. And I guess one of the things that took us all by surprise was the pandemic and the lockdown and everything. So that was just something that just happened, and everything became uncertain, and everything just changed overnight about how we did things. And so really well, we have to accept that human life is very uncertain. And so here it is talking about a minute particle of water trembling at the tip of a lotus petal. So and that's the poetry to help us look at that. So just to understand that things are extremely uncertain. One day somebody is here and the next day they are not. One day we're well and the next day we're not. And all sorts of things that happen, and this is the nature of life. Yeah, so to think that life is different from this would be a mistake. Okay, so we all think that actually, oh no, everything is as it is, and and a lot of us as well who have got family abroad and whom we don't see for a while, and then we just assume everything stays the same, and then when we go back we just see, oh, actually everybody is aged, and all that sort of thing if you don't see them very often. And so it's just, yeah, we kind of assume that things should stay the same, but this is a wrong expectation. This is a wrong assumption. Okay, so we need to know that. And here it is also important to look at the significance of the lotus. So we've all seen a lotus plant. So these water lilies, if you like, and so they grow in water. They exist in water, they're nourished by water, and then they also die in water. Okay, so that's about them. And this is quite important in the language of Vedanta. And it says, well, the flower is nothing but an expression of water. So it is an expression of water, but it's sprung because of some seed that was there. And there is this idea that we've talked about and that we will talk about a lot more. So is that there is nothing other than Ishvara in this world. So everything is the Lord expressed in different things. This is what the whole world is. So there is oneness. I mean, things appear as very different. So we all, if you like, we have all got different bodies. We've all got different experiences in our mind. The impressions of our mind are different. Our manners are different, and all sorts of things are different about us. But then the consciousness that shines through all of us is the same in all of us, and in all animals, plants, which is the same as us. So so whatever is manifesting different, but the essence of everything is Ishvara, and everything comes from Ishvara, and everything is the expression of Ishvara. So in Vedanta, this this example of the lotus comes a lot to sort of say, everything is an expression of Ishvara, and here everything is an expression of water, which is an element which is again from Ishvara. So that is something to think about. So, it might seem a little bit weird. It's like, I mean, everything is just so different, but looks so different, but how can it be the same? And it is something that is very puzzling for us, and it's something that can be very difficult for us to understand properly. So we can think about that, and we can discuss this as well. Okay, so we will talk later on about a lot more about this idea of oneness, and everything is the expression of Ishvara. So the other thing to understand in the second bit of this world, of this verse, is saying, understand that the world is consumed by disease and conceit and is riddled with pangs. So the presence of disease is to be expected. So disease is related to this physical body. And so even the mind is, even disease of the mind, and, you know, we associate them with the brain. So even this encompasses everything. So these are part of the world. And that's what happens, you know, when old age hits, then we kind of, then we know that disease happens, and we can see it around us. And then there is conceit as well in this world, a lot of it, and we can see a lot of it around us with our politicians, with our leaders, and, you know, and this is the way of the world. And you know, in the philosophy, they've talked about the various eras, and we are currently living in an era where conceit and, you know, and all these and sufferings are a lot more than it had been in previous eras as well. So really, I mean, life is so uncertain, is what this verse is saying, and it is characterized by sorrow. So what does that actually mean? So that means that you know, there is no time to waste. Okay, so we really need to kind of invest in our spiritual practice. We need to know what is real, what is not real, and understand these, and, you know, have the right expectation about disease, knowing that they might come. You know, I mean, it doesn't mean that, okay, because disease is here, it doesn't mean we don't have to look out after our body. So, but it's just saying we still need to do all these things, but we also need to know that this is what life is about, and this is also why we want to get out of this cycle of you know, of birth and death, continuous one, is because this is what it is. You know, it is full of disease and conceit as well. So it is not a pessimistic, so it's not meant to say, oh, you know, everything is terrible or that sort of thing, but it is meant to say, well, actually, these things are by nature, the world is imperfect. You know, this is by nature, this is what happens. So if we want to, you know, if we want to do something about it, then there is no time to waste. And also we can on a short-term basis, we can focus our mind on you know, on the Lord, on Govinda, on serving Govinda, and loving Govinda, developing that rapport with Govinda, rather than sort of, you know, not having these unrealistic expectations that, you know, by using this cream I'll be fit all the time, and, you know, by having a good diet or whatever I'll never have any disease. This is not true either. You just don't know. You still have to do the things that are correct, you know, but that you can do, but beyond that we don't know really. So this is what verse 4 is about. And so I think I will stop here today, and then we'll discuss. So we'll close the formal part. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.